The following is brought to you by our friends over at Actabl. Actabl gives you the power to profit. Please check them out at actabl.com and enjoy today's show. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of No Vacancy. Yes, thank you, Suzanne. I'm Glenn Haussman. That's Anthony Melchiorri. My memory is running thin these days. Good to see you, Anthony. What's going on, brother?
I'll tell you, on this episode,
Yep.
we're going to talk about fluid intake.
That's really important. You know, it's July. I will be running this in July, so you got to stay hydrated, and that's really important, particularly if you're going to places like Las Vegas, where you and I go to, where it's known to be 118, 119 degrees. And as we're recording this show, our guest Jimmy Taylor is coming from their VP operations, IHG and Army Hotels. Hey, Jimmy, great to see you, man.
Hey, Glenn. Hey, Anthony. Good to see you guys.
Jimmy, is it insulting at this point in your career that we can say the legend Jimmy Taylor?
No. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm too modest to have people start saying that stuff.
Well, we like making our guests feel uncomfortable. It's one of our unwritten rules here on the show. So, you're out there in Vegas talking to one of your hotelier clients out there. So it's got me thinking, what are some of the big issues that you're seeing right now with owners and operators out there?
I think right now the one thing that seems to be the most on everyone's mind is just talent. Obviously,
Yeah.
I watch your show. Everyone talks about talent, but what's kind of seems to be the big issue is a lot of people that didn't treat their employees the right way for years, whether you're an individual owner or whether you're a big management company.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them just took it for granted that there's an unlimited supply of people that would want to come to work at a hotel. And now that they're having to, possibly be nicer and treat them like they love them and treat them like they want to be there. It's funny because we get a lot of waiver requests for, hey, we can't find people. Like, well, you can't find people because you didn't treat them right for 5 years or 10 years or however long you've been around.
Yeah, and we're
No, right. And now the word is out in your market that, okay, don't go to work for Jimmy Taylor. That guy's not a nice guy. Why would you do that?
yeah,
And
I could vouch for what Jimmy just said is absolutely true.
Yeah, so it's just funny. It's funny to watch the human behavior and see that, okay, guys, you're creating your own issue here.
Yeah, I will say one of the incredible things about human psychology is how we're able to see things in other people that we can't see within ourselves. I guarantee if you interview some of these individuals, they will swear that they're doing everything possible to have a hospitable work environment.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we just did a round of 7 summits all across the country, saw almost 1,000 people. And one of the things I talked about was just being authentic. And, you know, everybody else is taken. So why would you want to be someone else anyway?
Well, that doesn't make
And,
sense.
right. And so when you are, you're coming across looking like a phony because okay, that's not me. I'm trying to be who I think Anthony wants me to be. And now you get yourself into a deeper issue. So
It's Jimmy. You've been doing this probably as long as me. I've been doing this since '86. And the one thing that I would say is the difference between, I like to say my brand has been authenticity, your brand's authenticity. You're known for that. You say what you say. You're a very kind person, but people also know you're a tough person. However, there are plenty of people in the industry like us, but they're afraid. Their fear is what makes them not be authentic. I have very rarely been around a company or a group of people that treated their employees really well and let them kind of just run the show. And those people were afraid to be themselves. They're afraid to be themselves because they're afraid. They're not afraid to be themselves. They're afraid. And that's what I think we're talking about, because you said well, the reason you can't find employees is because nobody wants to work for
yeah, I mean, I have a dear friend that went to work for a new company not long ago. And, it's interesting to watch how so many people, and I hate the word micromanage because it's so overused, but so many people hire someone, they hire a thoroughbred, and then they treat them like a donkey.
Right.
And you can't,
Well said.
if someone has come over with a great resume and then you overmanage them, they're going to be so unhappy within the first week, they will question, what did I just do? Because you hire talent and you support talent and then you back away and let them make a difference. You don't then question, hey, I noticed this email. Could you change this word? Could you do this? I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to run this person off because you're not leading them. And you're right. It's human nature to try to manage someone versus trust. And I love the fact that you all asked me to be on this show a month ago, and I didn't talk to anyone at all. And I just knew that at noon today, I would be on the show. I had no clue what you would ask me. So a lot of times my company is like, Jimmy, that's a little risky. What are you doing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, you're not going to ask me hidden secrets about IHG.
No, but I do wanna do wanna get to the bottom of your hate for Ellie Malouf over there. I think maybe the birthday scandalous stuff. No, the problem is you're a pro. You knew exactly what to say, and you also know that go back to being authentic. If you could just be you and speak from the heart with the genuine facts you know, you're not going to get your company in trouble because you also have good common sense.
Right, but I think that's where most people trip up. They have to be scripted, they have to be prepared. The company doesn't like it. And, I don't know how I've been here this long. I've had now 19 bosses here. And so, I sometimes wonder why someone hasn't run me off yet. But I'm just me, and I try to be there mostly for our owners. Owners built a hotel with their money. They didn't build it with our money. They built it with their own money, and we need to support them. And if you lose that main principle, you don't need to be in this business because you're now playing a game versus, I had someone tell me years ago, he called me Paycheck Friday. And he said, "You're just a paycheck Friday." And I'm like, "Okay, tell me more." He said, "Look, everything I own is on the line. You work for a big company. You're going to get paid on Friday. No matter what, you're going to get paid on Friday. I have to make payroll." And when he said that to me, and this is years ago, is one of the best. And he was kind of hitting me with a barb, but he did me the biggest favor ever because I've never forgotten that. You're right. I am a paycheck Friday, but I don't have to act like one.
Were you able to tell him that in real time, or did it take you some time to process it and appreciate it?
It was probably a week later after I really thought about it and thought, you know what? You are correct.
How many
Um,
people have you taught that lesson to?
Everyone that I've come across since then.
Right. And
A-
and that is critically important. But and I've said this to you before, and you in this industry, if you drop my name, people will have an opinion. If I drop your name, people will have an opinion. There has never been a time, ever, not once, that I said I'm friends with Jimmy Taylor where people didn't freak out. Oh my God, he's the best. I wish he was my boss now. I love him. I love him. I love him. And because what you just said, because you're fair to the owners and you understand this isn't my money, it's your money. Okay. But I'm going to do it my way and I'm going to be authentic, but I'm also going to be honorable. The one thing that everyone says about you is you're honorable. And that's what's missing in some areas of this business is that people are trying to serve everyone and they serve no one. You have to serve yourself. And if you serve yourself in an honorable way, you'll serve everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking about, and I appreciate your comment. That's very nice. You must have talked to my family and friends. I don't think but I can say that I've been talking about these 6 A's forever, and I just, years and years. And one of them is approachable. And I think that a lot of people are not as approachable as they think they are. And when you think
Well,
of a
yeah, when they say
housekeeper,
their door's always open, that's plenty, isn't it?
yeah, they'll say your door's always open. I'm thinking, who's going to want to go in there? I
Yeah.
don't want to walk into your office. And so, the one thing that I've noticed is when you think of housekeepers, front desk, all the people that are critical to our business, they look at all of us, and I'm talking DOSs, GMs, they look at us as, "Oh my gosh, you're so reverend and you're so up there." But they don't, and they're a little bit nervous to even talk to you. And I can tell you this, one of the things I did incorrectly years ago was when someone would ask me, "How you doing today? What's going on?" I would say, "Oh, I'm so busy," or "I'm really swamped," or whatever. And it would force them to think, "Oh, okay, well, I don't need to go to Jimmy
Yeah, right.
for an answer because he's so busy." And so then they would go to other team members or other hotels or other regionals. And then when I would find out, I'm like, "Why didn't you just come to me? I got that open door." They're like, "Yeah, but you said you're so busy." And then I realized, "Oh my gosh, I'm shooting myself in the foot here. I
Wow.
can't use that line because I'm never too busy for my employees, clients, or owners, ever."
It's interesting because I know how busy you are and you never look busy. When I talk to you, I see you, or when we used to deal with each other all the time, like you never look busy. You were always moving, but you never look busy. You always were present. And that's, I think, the most important thing of a leader is to be present.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you at least noticed that, because I don't want anyone to feel that I don't have time for them. And there's plenty of people when you're talking to them, they are looking somewhere else for either some other conversation or someone more important. There's no one more important than the person standing in front of you. And especially if you're at a hotel or talking to an owner, that's who pays our salary.
Listen,
I
when we were working together and I was opening that hotel in New York, there's plenty of people in your position that I would have a major problem with and would have either run me off or I would have spoken up and said something. And we worked brilliantly together, I think, from my perspective. I respected how you went about your business. I knew when I needed to shut my mouth and do what the brand's telling me to do. And I knew when I can push a little bit. And that to me is a relationship, like where we all have to give and take and we all have to be respectful of each other. No one ever tried to change me in IHG. I say it all the time. Like I love working with that group because they never tried to change who I was.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, that's a good point. I can tell you that one of the things that I've noticed over the years with maybe even our company is that, first of all, an owner builds a hotel and a market. They don't build a brand and a state. It's a very specific, okay. And I remember years ago, Roswell, New Mexico, one of our owners was building a hotel. And, that's supposedly the UFO, that's where all this is supposed to happen. And he wanted to do a few things in his lobby. And the brand initially said, "Nope, nope, we don't do that."
That's dumb.
And I'm like, "Wait a minute. Should we celebrate that for this hotel?" And so he called me, and yes, the answer is yes. You want to put a personalization to a hotel. You can't turn it into make it look like a spaceship, but you can put a few paintings on the wall that
Yeah, why
reference.
not?
Right. So
A
a
lot
lot of
of
times.
hotels pride themselves in having artwork of where they are in the select service category.
Exactly, but, a lot of times we can become too rigid and lose our logic, and to me, when I'm dealing with someone that's not logical, I have a hard time. Just be logical, and, I think the world will be a lot better if most corporations were more logical.
So let me ask you a question, which I think is critically important for a person with your experience. Give me an example of where you work with someone that you had to move the relationship in a way to make it work for both of you because it wasn't. And even though it was maybe the boss's responsibility, it took your skill to change that relationship. Do you understand the question? Is
Yes,
that
sir. Um, I think that there's been quite a few examples of that where and it's usually because of the lack of understanding. I think COVID really put a lot more minds and focus on the suites and the extended stay world. But what you had was a lot of premium space and certainly full service owners that were coming into our space. And, Anthony, you were one of them. You were one of those that came through and you had great experience. You knew exactly how to run a hotel. You knew how to sell a hotel. But the thought of reducing rate to have a longer length of stay to be able to help the expense model was foreign to you. And most owners are like, what do you mean reduce rate? I'm not reducing rate. That's stupid. But okay, once you explain it to them and you sit down with a displacement analysis and you talk about, hey, do you want to make more money or do you want to have a higher ADR? Once you talk to them, but it takes, I mean, some owners, I had one in Birmingham, Alabama. He admitted to me not long ago, it took him a year and a half to actually believe in and follow what we were trying to say. And so many times people don't respond to length of time in the business. They respond to depth of a relationship. And once they trust you, okay, now you got them. But they don't trust you because here, take this pill. This is a trust pill. And tomorrow morning, you're going to trust me. It's built on time and moments, not anything else.
Okay, I got a harder one for you.
Okay,
Right?
great.
I understand how hard it is to work for as long as you have in a corporation because of all the changes. And even though it's a great company, there's changes and challenges. What, when you were a younger person, whether it be in high school, at home, in middle school, what was the lesson that you learned that helps you every day in working in a structure that's a little bit more rigid than you as a person? Because you're not a rigid person, you're a pretty entrepreneurial person. What taught you how to function in that environment?
I mean, I played sports all the way through college. I had many good coaches, but I had one coach in college that all of our meetings were at 104 or 527 or 618. And I remember thinking at the time, that's so silly. What are we doing that for? But as I once I got out of college and once I kind of talked to him afterwards, he said, Jimmy, what did that do for you? And I said, I don't know. Half the time we were all trying to remember what time you said. He said, exactly. It made you all talk. And he would walk over at 527 and lock the door. And if you weren't there, you were running sprints or whatever the punishment was. But he forced us. He said, it's just like a snap count in football. It's just like whatever. You have to remember that I said 527. And it forced us to really all communicate, and we became closer as a team because, hey, what time is the meeting tonight? What time are we supposed to get on the bus? And it was never 1 o'clock. It was never 5 o'clock. So to this day, my calls every third Friday are at 104, partly in his honor. But you know what? That's just you're not remembered if you say, hey, we have a meeting at 1 o'clock.
Also, that's I agree.
So the funny joke is that when I finally leave this earth, my funeral is going to be at 2:07. It's gonna be some crazy time.
I love that.
Well, but that's not only an incredible story, it's that you remembered it and you played tribute to it. And I have some stories in my background that whether it be in the Air Force or whatever it was, that I remember those. And it's not an hour speech. It's a moment. It's like, why'd you do 104? Why'd you do 217? And that lesson probably took 10 seconds. And it's a lifelong lesson. I remember I had a colonel that was, he actually, I was attached to an army base for a while in Honduras, and he was the director of leadership at West Point eventually. And he said to me, do a little more, you go a lot further. Just that one sentence changed my life. It just absolutely changed my life.
Yeah.
I agree.
Also, Ted Turner on TBS TV started programs 5 minutes after the hour instead of on the hour to separate themselves and have their own listing in the TV guide. And yeah, it worked, and that's how at the beginning of the cable revolution when he would
You're
say,
a plethora of useful information.
Hopefully, well, Jimmy is too. Jimmy, I feel like we've gotten a few A's. You mentioned there are 6 A's. So,
6 A's.
you didn't you say that you have 6 A's that you follow?
Okay, I'll breeze through them real quick. So accessible is the first one.
Yep.
Just because you have a cell phone doesn't mean you're accessible. You have
That's
to actually respond. You have to use it. You have to treat it like a communication device and not something that you're upset over the number of things people are reaching out to. It's still the hospitality industry. And if you got into this because you want to go into a corner and respond to emails and texts, you're in the wrong business.
You find the more successful people that are the busiest people respond the fastest?
They do.
I feel the same way. I see the same thing. No matter how busy you are, no matter how important you are, I have a friend that's a very important person in his business. He responds to me quicker than anybody.
Yeah, but it's a priority. It's a priority because they put a priority on people, and that's what it is. The second one's accountable.
Mhm.
That's pretty much self-explanatory.
Yep.
Let's see, approachable. We talked about that one. Attitude. It's just how you talk to yourself, basically. Authentic. We talked about.
Yep.
And then I added adaptability 3 or 4 years ago during COVID because people aren't throwing us fastballs straight down the middle and you swing. People are throwing curveballs every day. So how we adapt to situations and, I think we've all watched that. So
Yeah.
many people, it's really how you adapt to the curveballs of life and daily, workings as to whether you're successful or not. It's
You said something,
us.
something interesting. I didn't mean to interrupt you. But you said accountability, but that's self-explanatory. I'm
Yeah.
infallible on that because when you say accountability today, well, how can I be accountable when my schedule is late? How can I be accountable when my uniform wasn't ready? How can I be accountable when my manager is not paying attention? How can I be accountable? No, 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 no. Be accountable for yourself.
Yep.
All that stuff are the curveballs you're talking about. All that's going to happen. So accountability, I think, of all your words, is the most important word because your entire life, you look in the mirror in the morning and you're like, I'm accountable. And that to me is what I'm finding is the biggest problem we have in our industry. Or really,
When I talk about these, it's an hour. It takes an hour. So, but you did call me out, and I like that. The fact that we are all a brand, and you touched on that early on. We're all a brand. When someone says all three of our names, they think something. And is it positive? Is it an interaction you want, or
Mhm.
is it one you want to run away from?
Right.
And the one thing that I think drives me the most crazy is when people talk about work-life balance. To me, it's really balance versus satisfaction. And which one do you want more out of life? Do you want satisfaction every day, or do you want a work-life balance every day? Well, you want satisfaction. You want to, and you can't. The two are always going to be intertwined. If I go to work today and my kid is sick at home, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna be as productive because
Right.
it's just so you can't separate the 2. And when corporations try to separate the 2, they actually get themselves in more trouble. So
Jack Welch, chapter 7 of his book said, work-life balance is not my responsibility. Because I was having trouble when I was running Nickelodeon with people complaining about me that I was, we had a lot of work to do. And after I read that chapter, I had a meeting and I said, if there's a report due on Monday, and you have a softball game all weekend and you can't get that report, all you have to do is say, is that report really due on Monday or can I give it to you on Tuesday? And I will probably say, you can give it to me on Wednesday. Okay. But if you tell me you missed your kid's softball game to get me that report because you were afraid to tell me, I'll be more upset that you missed the softball game than you missed the report. And so my work, and if I say no, Monday, you have to, it's an owners meeting, you have to have it Monday, and you have to work Saturday night after the softball game to 4 o'clock in the morning, I don't care. Because you have to manage your work-life balance. And just like we all do. So I love that you said that.
well, and I'm not positive I totally answered your question about how I had lasted this long in the business. Seems like we might have gotten sidetracked somewhere. But to me, when you're in any company or whatever you're doing in life, you have to have a lot of allies. And maybe the word allies is not correct, but you have to have a lot of I've watched so many people hitch their wagon up to a couple of people. That person moves on, leaves, does
Right.
something else. And then people are like, well, who's Jimmy Taylor? Well, that was the guy that worked for so and so. And if you don't show value to a lot of people, you will get yourselves in trouble real fast
Wow, I like that.
because that's just that's
I always call, who's your rabbi, right? In the military, it's like, who's your rabbi? Because you don't get promoted unless you have a rabbi. But you really need a lot of them. Everybody
right.
needs to be somebody talking and helping you.
No, yep, you're correct. You're
But
correct.
you're not the person that if this for that kind of person. You're
No.
not a person that's going to call somebody for a favor just out of the blue or like people know they can count on you and you can count on them. So I see a lot of people that are just very transactional and people pick up on that pretty quick when you're transactional. I reach out to people in the middle of the day for no reason whatsoever, just to say,
Right.
"Wow,
So do I. So do I, because I have plenty of people that call me once a year when it's time for them to go on vacation and they want a deal somewhere. And I'm like, that's so phony. I don't want that. The one thing I've done all these Bertmans and all these 360 assessments, we've all done these assessments a lot. And the one thing every time for me, what do you guess is number one? What do you think's the number
authenticity,
one descriptor? It's
authenticity,
empathy.
empathy."
It says my empathy is the high, which is an ability to put yourself in other people's shoes. Doesn't mean you're nice, doesn't mean you're a pushover, but it means you at least understand what the heck they're going through. And now I have to determine, okay, how do I react to that? But the empathy piece is something that I feel like I do a
Can you
decent
train
job.
that though? Can you
How
train
about
it with me?
yeah.
Can I train it?
Can you train empathy?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I've read books on empathy once I kept seeing that was a descriptor of mine. And I think a lot of it goes back to what was your upbringing, what's your parents, whatever. My dad was a very empathetic guy, and so okay, I guess I got it from him. But I try to at least operate in a way so that my leaders and my regional VPs and our entire team take on that mindset. So I'm not sure it's training, but I do know that when they're not on my team and they're treating an owner like they shouldn't treat them, because I always have said, if you are complaining about an owner, that's who's paying your salary. If we had a world of great owners that didn't need anything, you don't have a job.
No.
You're out of a job.
Yeah, but and that's interesting. My word real quick is fair. People say I'm fair, and I love that because that doesn't say I'm nice, doesn't say I'm mean. It says I'm fair.
Yeah.
And very interesting. You say owners in hotels, and an owner in a hotel is not like a restaurant. You and three cousins can come up with money for a restaurant, right? An owner of a hotel has means and have had success because they wouldn't have had success if to own a hotel because a hotel is expensive. And the owner already has tendencies and abilities in other businesses potentially or in other hotels. So they're coming in established with money, with an opinion, with a strong opinion. And that turns our industry off instantly. And they try to fit then into a shoe size that you can't get an entrepreneur to fit it. That I just realized that's been your greatest hour because most people suck at it.
Yeah, and that's kind of back to the story I was mentioning earlier about the person that hired a thoroughbred, but they're managing them like a donkey. You just can't do that because the person will become they'll question, why did you hire me if you're going to look over my shoulder all day?
Right.
Right.
And entrepreneurs and people that are entrepreneurial, general managers, managing directors, whoever it is, they want the challenge. They
Exactly.
matter of fact, I'm allergic to people standing over my shoulder. I literally can't handle it. I'll have a nervous breakdown. I put more pressure on myself when I get freedom, because the freedom is a trust that I have to pay back.
You're
You're
exactly right.
giving me, you're paying the interest before I earned it. You're giving me that interest up front. And you're saying, hey, Anthony, here's 10% interest on your dollar. But I didn't give you the dollar yet. Don't worry about it. Here's your interest. Spend it the way you want. Now I got to give you that dollar. So when you're over my shoulder, I'll give you an example. I don't take contracts when I take over companies. I won't take a contract. In 6 months, hire me and give me more money and give me promotion, or fire me. Because if you give me incentives freak me out.
Yeah.
You know, like, give me freedom. And then I'll pay you back 3 times.
I agree with that.
But it sounds like today we're covering important life lessons right out of Spider-Man. With
But I said, you have someone that Jimmy's experience. When you have someone with Jimmy's experience, I'll just personally say, I don't give a damn about, what's the state of the industry? What's the state of this? We get that from 100 people.
Right.
Oh, you have someone like Jimmy who's been and seen it all and has mentored thousands of young minds. I want to hear the secrets, because, or the key ingredients, because he just helped a mid-level manager. Somebody's going to take his 104 and he's going to use it. Someone's going to take his principles and write them down. So to me, when you have someone with your experience, Jimmy, like, that's the conversations we should be having. Now,
Yeah, that was the one thing that I'd written down. I only wrote down one thing, and that was, what can I say different that hasn't been said? And there's not much. I mean, I mentioned that to start. But I like where this conversation went, because we can all talk about star reports and RGI and guest love scores and all those things. Everybody can do that.
Yeah. So, Jimmy, we're going to be able to push rate another $2.40 this year.
Right.
Yes.
No, and that's why we ask questions that maybe you weren't asked before. I was somebody said, when you were 8 years old, what was the thing that inspired you to be a better manager? And to me, that's why I get out of bed in the morning. I don't give a crap about everything else, because there's so much BS where it's like, we have to hit this mark and hit this mark and hit this mark. We're hitting this mark with human beings, with people who have had horrible upbringings, people that want to make a difference, people that are insecure, people that are having problems at home, people that are financially in trouble. And now you're trying to get them to be this perfect human being and perform this perfect task for people who don't give a shit about that. And that's why people love you, because your number one thing is you understand that list of things that comes to the table before they're in their uniform.
Years and years ago, I just thought of this. Years and years ago, when I was a GM and I hadn't been in the business that long, I had a regional come in. Actually, it was the VP of operations for that company. And they came in and he said, you're probably not going to make it very far in this business because you're too nice. You're too nice.
Really?
And I remember thinking, really? And all I ended up coming back out of that was, you don't know me very well. If you ask my team, I'm not too nice. I definitely, hey, we have to do this way. We have to hit this. We have to operate this way, and we have to treat each other in a certain manner.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember thinking, and what was funny was, he was the one that didn't last in the business very long. And I still think about that, and it wasn't a challenge. It was more of you don't know your people. And so I always took that as, I'm not going to make a blanket statement to anybody. They might be nice, but I don't know them well enough yet to know, are you nice all the time and people just run over you? So it was interesting, but he didn't last too long, and I guess I did.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have the opposite reputation of being too tough. But you talk to my teams, you go into the hotels I used to manage, and we hug and we kiss. It's people, I always say high achievers cannot stand being around mediocrity, and mediocrity cannot stand being around high achievers. They don't mix. So if you have a team of high achievers, they want the pressure, they want the challenge. As long as you're kind, empathetic, and you understand that you're the least important person in the room. Yeah. You get that group together and you can change the world. You get a bunch of mediocre people in the room with a couple of high performers, I'm not losing my high performers. So I will let 70% of the mediocre people walk out the door before I lose one high performer.
Right, but a lot of new leaders don't know the difference, and they can't tell fast enough. And you have to quickly determine, okay, who do I have? If it's the brown noser, if it's the person that, oh, I love your shoes, Mr. Taylor. If it's that person, that's not the high achiever. That's the person that's been around long enough to know what to say and how to play the game.
Yeah, is that the Dwight Schrute of the,
I never wear nice shoes, so I know they're lying anyway.
It's funny. On my show, we went through like 17 producers in the first couple seasons, and there was this one or two producers, Maddie and Lisa, who were my favorite. And one day we were in Pennsylvania, and I was I was like, Maddie, 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 Maddie. And she turns around. Finally, she comes over and goes, "What the hell do you want?" And I was like, "Well, this, that." And she goes, "What the hell you think I was doing? Can you go sit over there?" I was like, "Okay, okay." Like, she's a producer on my show, and I'm like, "Okay, I don't want the brown noser. I want the person who's gonna tell me to shut up and sit in the corner.
Yeah, hell
Like,
yeah.
I'm getting in their way." And that's how you build a company.
Yeah, I know, but that's the tough part about corporate America, is that so many times, and sometimes a guy can say something that a female can't, and that's so wrong. Hey, she's described as a
Right,
whatever,
right.
and yet the guy's like, "Oh, he's hard nosed, he's tough." And I've always leaned a little bit more towards making sure that the females in our organization are never characterized as something other than she's tough, but she's fair. Period. Don't don't use any other word to describe her. She's good at her job. And so a lot of people try to dance around that issue. I don't. I
Well,
love some and I love to challenge people a lot of times.
listen, I've equated it. It's almost a scientific experiment at this point in my life. I've sat with people at dinner tables. The same people that I don't think is good at their job or not nice are not nice to the servant.
Yeah.
People that
You're
are
exactly right.
the people who are really high level and who are really nice to their employees are incredibly good tippers and incredibly nice to the servants.
Yep. And you know what? And even walking in a building, if you're walking in your building every day and you don't know the receptionist or the person's name, you're not you're not good. We had not this company, but another company years ago. We had our CEO would purposely go in the back elevator so he wouldn't have to see anybody. Like, isn't that kind of backwards? Aren't you the one that's setting the culture? Aren't you the one that's supposed to be the one that's the head of the fish here? But it's kind of funny.
Reminds me of a great Saturday Night Live bit from a number of years ago. It was like a game show format, and the people who were contestants in the game, they brought out different people like, "This has been your doorman in your building for 20 years. He did this, this, and this for you. What's his name?"
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah,
This same thing
I
I'm talking
remember being
about.
I remember being on set in Fort Lauderdale. It was my second show, and I remember the PA is the guy you just bring on or the girl you bring on for the day. Nobody really knows that.
Yeah.
They work with us for the week or whatever. And I remember saying to the director, I say, Carlos, what's that person's name? I was like, I don't know. He's like, you need coffee? I go, no. He's like, you need a sandwich? I go, no. And then I heard them saying, excuse me, excuse me. I was like, grabbed everybody. I was like, never again do we come on a set and we ask a PA and we don't know their name. And you say, ask the PA. And I'm really bad at names, but I made sure I knew the PA's name before anybody else because that person is just as important as me today. And that's it.
Exactly. And if you're in the hospitality industry, it's magnified so many times.
Yeah. Listen, the greatest gift of my life, I'll tell my children, is that I've been able to amplify the housekeepers.
Yep.
That I've been able to, for years on TV, be able to amplify. I don't care about anybody else but the housekeeper. And if they're happy, everybody's happy.
Yeah, you're right.
Awesome. That's probably a good place to wrap it up today. Jimmy, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you.
Always great to speak with you too. It gets my day going, especially on a Monday. Now I
Right.
can go hop on a plane and go to Vegas, and I won't lose any money because I don't really gamble. I don't have
Okay. All right. I'll Venmo you $25. Put 25 on 11 and roulette, and you'll win.
Okay. Red or black or
No,
what?
just
That
the
doesn't
number
matter.
on the left.
Just the number.
Odds are, yeah, like 36-1. So you're going to be,
If you win, don't tell me. If you lose, I'll send you the $25.
we went from Venmo to I'll send it to you real quick. Oh, that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. And I can feel the sigh of release from IHG people globally right now.
Yeah.
That went well. Thank you, Jimmy. Appreciate you. I appreciate all of you guys out there. Of course, you want to download our show, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and all of the other social sites. And we'll see you next time right back here. And remember, until then, remember, you got one life, so blaze on, and
Be kind and stuff.
see y'all later.
Jimmy, tell.